Robin Hood Last Stop from Zenescope. It's just a one shot. And yeah, we start off with this homeless guy walking down the tracks. And we get this thing where it says, long before the white man came here, the place belonged to others. Things that have been here much longer than any man. Dark and dangerous things. And I'm just like, so why did you have to put the white man in there? Like, here's the thing. Maybe I'm looking too much into things, but the whole race subject, I'm going to kind of bring it up a few times in this issue. And it's just, maybe I'm just overanalyzing every little thing. You tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, right here in the beginning, long before the white man came here, this place belonged to others. Dark and dangerous things. You could have just not had the white man part and just said, long before man came here, this place belonged to others. Dark and dangerous things that thirst for blood. Like, you didn't have to have the race in there. But anyways, yeah, this homeless guy goes in the tunnels and he gets killed by this creature. And so we have Robyn. And Robyn is trying to keep a low profile, trying not to let the cops discover her because of what happened in a previous story. Here's the thing I'm kind of wondering, though. If you're trying to keep a low profile, why are you still in the same city? Why are you still wearing the same haircut? Why are you not covering the fact that you have a glowing eye? Like, if you don't want anyone to know that you're Robin Hood, maybe dye your hair, cut it short, maybe wear glasses, like sunglasses, or like a fake contact lens or something, because you're very noticeable. I don't think there's many long blonde-haired women out there with a scar through their eye that glows bright gold. Just a thought. So yeah, she goes down to the subway and they're waiting for a train. We see this woman with her child, and the child's like, I don't like being down here. The woman's like, it's okay, honey, look at all these people. Basically, she's like saying that nothing's going to happen because there's a lot of people here. And then we get one of the only other white guys in this character who's a huge sleaze bag, and he's trying to hit on like all the young women that he comes across. And so the train arrives, they go inside, and then once again, we get three other white characters, and they're evil. They're villains. They pull out guns, they hold the train hostage, they knock out the driver, and they basically say, we do this in your service, Lord. I'm going to totally butcher this name. Nyarlathotep. It's the Lovecraftian creature, the Crawling Darkness. I always just refer to him as the Crawling Darkness because anyone who's ever read Lovecraft, some of his creatures are just really freaking hard to pronounce. Here's the funny thing, though. Crawling Darkness is mentioned in this a couple of times, but doesn't make any appearance whatsoever in the story, has nothing to do with him. So I'm wondering, it's like, are you planting seeds? Every once in a while, like in every issue, you're going to have at least one mention of the Crawling Darkness, and then there's going to be like a huge Crawling Darkness issue or miniseries. Is that what you're doing? Or did you just set this up for no reason? Because basically these villains, these gangsters, they hijack the train for the Crawling Darkness, who's their lord, and they're going to offer them up as the people inside as sacrifice. Interesting thing is that Robin Hood has no idea who the Crawling Darkness is. I don't know, you would think that she would, maybe. At least I've heard that name before. Unless this is like, the Zenescope is a world where we have to pretend that all Cthulhu monsters and stuff like that, no one has ever heard of any of these things before because they've never been written about because they're real. I don't know. I don't know. How have you not heard of that? Especially if you're Robin Hood and your whole job is fighting monsters. Like, that's all you spend your life doing. You would think you would have heard about the Cthulhu mythos at some point. And so Robin fights the thugs, shoots one of them in the arm, which causes the train to crash. And everyone steps out, and they realize that they're trapped because the way back, it collapsed. That is blocked. So they can't go out that way. And so they realize that the only way is to keep going forward and to find an access tunnel. And so, yeah, we have our group here. One of them is a Native American who seems to have an understanding of what's going on because he sees like this mural. And I'm just going to spoil it. It's a Wendigo. The main baddie here is not the Crawling Darkness. It's a Wendigo. So this Wendigo has been hunting homeless people in the subway trains. And the Native American, his name is Jeb. Jeb tells the story about the Wendigo, how it's like, one of the worst kind of monsters. And he kind of shares what it is with Robyn about how it's been The Wendigo's been passed down from generation to generation. It's a flesh eater brought to life by the corruption of man. It's not just a legend. There's no way to kill it. I'm just like, wait a second. There are ways to kill Wendigos. At least according to, I mean, if you want to make your own rules for creatures, that's cool. But yeah, there are ways to kill Wendigos. In fact, there are plenty of stories. There's one of them where this Wendigo kidnaps a Native American child, and rather than eating him right away, he is taking him on this journey because he's trying to fatten up this kid. And eventually the kid's able to escape and find another Native American tribe. And he tells them about the Wendigo and how the Wendigo wants to eat him. So they go out, they find the Wendigo, and they cut off its legs and go back to their tribe. And then the next day they go to see if the Wendigo is dead, and it's not. It's instead sucking the marrow from its own bones. And so they cut it up some more, and eventually it's dead. So yeah, Wendigos can be killed. There's also a moment where Robyn says that Zeb reminds her of Deckard, which is really, really funny because, so Deckard, for anyone who doesn't know, is her lover who she lost in a previous one-shot or series. There's two funny things about that. One, Zeb is a old Native American. Deckard is a very young Caucasian man. So how do you look at Zeb and he reminds you of Deckard? So that's one thing. The second thing is she's like, you know, she talks about how she hasn't thought about Deckard in weeks. She's put it out of her mind because it brings back so many hurtful memories. She only knew Deckard for one day. So how do you meet someone in one day, instantly fall in love with them, and then like they have such a big place in your heart? So they hear screams. They rush back and they find the thugs that Robyn had tied up. She basically, after the subway crash, she tied up the thugs to the tracks so that they, you know, she wouldn't have to drag the thugs with them. And as they go back, they see the Wendigo, and there's a fight between the two. She's able to like shoot some arrows on it and slice it, and it collapses the tunnel. And so Jeb's like, the thing is not dead. Like, you can't just kill it like that. Wendigos don't die. And he also mentions, don't let it touch you. If it draws your blood, it'll infect you with the madness, and you'll kind of become a Wendigo yourself. And then it's like, again, I think you're kind of creating your own rules here. Wendigos, it's a Native American belief in some tribes. I don't know how many. But the belief is that if you give in to cannibalism, you become a Wendigo. That's like the main belief. It's not like a werewolf. If it cuts you, it doesn't transform you. In fact, I guess the story I told earlier about the little boy who was kidnapped by the Wendigo, one of the things it would do is it would constantly cut his hand to see how fat he is, to see if he's good to eat. So yeah, this boy didn't become a Wendigo, even when it was cut and had blood drawn. But eventually they see the sleaze bag from earlier, and he comes out and he's like, you know, help me. And it turns out that he has wounds in the same area that Robyn has shot him. So she's like, oh, this guy's the Wendigo. So it's kind of weird that you're taking the Native American creature and then now you're making a white guy the Wendigo instead of the Native American. I don't know. Are there any stories of white people becoming Wendigos? All I know is that it's Native American. It's a Native American story. It's a Native American story about Native Americans who cannibalize themselves, become Wendigos. But maybe it's just anyone that cannibalizes itself in general. I mean, I guess to be fair, when you have papers and stuff like that talk about Wendigos, they just mention humans. They don't necessarily mention race. So I guess a white guy could be one. It's just kind of interesting that a white guy in New York would become a Wendigo all of a sudden. And the reason that they give is greed. So greed is a thing in the Wendigo mythology. There are different ways to turn into Wendigos. One of them is to eat the flesh of another human. Another one is to give into greed. Another one to be like possessed by the spirits of something, like an evil spirit. But it's just kind of weird because it's like, okay, if giving into greed makes you a Wendigo, then how is there just one person in all of New York who's a Wendigo? I mean, this is New York. You're telling me that there's only one person who's really super greedy in New York? Come on, man. But this is where I want you to tell me if I'm looking too much into things. All the white characters in here are bad. You have the whole white man story in the beginning before the white man came. You have the sleazebag who ends up becoming the Wendigo. You have the three gangsters. So any white guy, I would say, is evil, except maybe the train driver. Is he even white? Yeah, I guess you can say he's white. He's like the only one that's not. All the other white characters, white males in this are evil. So yeah, again, you tell me if I'm looking too much into it. I just thought I was like, oh, okay. It doesn't bother me, but it's just like, I noticed it. But yeah, we get a fight between Robyn and the Wendigo, and there's some more. I'm not gonna spoil everything, but I will say for Zenescope, the artwork is actually pretty decent. Zenescope can be very like hit or miss. Either the artwork is pretty good, or the artwork is just it looks like it's very static. I guess is the best way to describe it. Like there's no like energy behind the images, and it looks very much like photos, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it looks almost like terribly drawn pinups in action poses. That's the best way to explain it. Rather than having like it looks like an actual fight scene, it just looks like characters in action poses, and that's supposed to be like the fight scene. So you get that, or you get something like this where it's actually not that badly drawn. Like I actually enjoyed the artwork in this one. So yeah, story itself interesting. I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I've always had a thing for I love any kind of folklore, like creatures, like demons, monsters. I especially love like the Japanese stuff, like yokais and things like that. Like I just love reading that. But I love any kind of like the German monsters, Native American monsters, the Wendigos. I even love like the design for the Wendigos. Like they can be like really creepy when you have like the tall, super thin creatures with the like antlers. It can just look. It looks badass sometimes. Like I've seen like artwork of Wendigos, and it's like that's always been like a monster that has fascinated me. Plus the whole like you become one by becoming a cannibal and stuff. Like there's just something interesting about that. So yeah, a story revolving around the Wendigo. I was like, sweet, awesome. But yeah, it's just like I said, the only it's not even a nitpick because like I said, it didn't hurt the series, the issue whatsoever for me. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh, all the white men are either terrible or useless. Because I guess you could say that the bus driver, he doesn't do anything in the entire story. In fact, he's mostly injured throughout most of it. He's just kind of like a background character. All the other white men are bad guys. And I was like, okay. But like I said, that didn't ruin the issue for me. My only, I don't even want to say a nitpick. Well, I guess it was just my only thing was like, why did you bring it up if you weren't going to go anywhere with it? Was the crawling darkness. Why did you bring up the crawling darkness? Why did you bring up Lovecraft when there's nothing there about Lovecraft? Like this is about the Wendigo. I'm assuming maybe that they're setting up. We're gonna throw in seeds of like this big calamity coming, and then eventually down the line they're gonna pay it off, and we're gonna have an issue with the crawling darkness in it. That's what I'm guessing. But yeah, other than that, this was a nice, fun issue. I would recommend it. Go check it out. Decent artwork, good action. If you just want like something like a popcorn flick in comic book form, here you go. So yeah, it gets recommended for me. There you go though. There's Robin Hood Last Stop. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Take care. Later.